Today we're going to be comparing the French press and the AEROPRESS. Welcome back to About Coffee, where we talk about all things coffee to help you on your coffee journey. Today we're going to be comparing the French press and the AEROPRESS, so let's dive into that information for you. First of all, let's start off with their similarities. They're both full immersion brewers. Now what full immersion brewing is when coffee and water sit together for a certain amount of time to extract the coffee. Extraction is where it pulls out the flavour and the goodness of the coffee, and that's what happens when the coffee and the water are sitting together. So that's how they're similar, but let's dive into their differences. Now the main difference between these two brewers is one word: pressure. The French press doesn't use any pressure to separate the grounds from the water to create that extracted coffee. The metal mesh part is pushed down, and that is what separates the grounds from the coffee. Now when we push that metal mesh down and it separates the grounds from the water, there is sometimes grounds left over in your extracted coffee. Now that can be a good thing for some people. Some people really like that taste, but it's not the cleanest cup of coffee. But then jumping over to the AEROPRESS, we're using pressure to extract the coffee and therefore having a cleaner cup of coffee. The brew time with the AEROPRESS is going to be shorter than the French press because we're making up for time with pressure instead to extract that coffee. So that is one of the main differences. By using pressure, that is what's helping extract the coffee with the AEROPRESS, whereas time is helping the French press extract the coffee. So when I said the AEROPRESS has a cleaner cup of coffee, what does that mean? Well, as I said, the French press sometimes has grounds left in it, so it's maybe a dirtier cup of coffee, maybe, to use that phrase, but the AEROPRESS has a cleaner cup because when you push through over the paper filter that the AEROPRESS uses, it means that you're getting a nice clean cup of coffee because none of those coffee grounds are coming into your cup. So they're the kinds of cups of coffee that you'll get from the brewers, but what are their positives and negatives? Now, the AEROPRESS does take a lot more time and thought process, in my opinion, to brew a really good cup of coffee from it, whereas the French press is a little easier to use. So if you're brewing first thing in the morning, maybe like 5 a.m, you're coming downstairs and just want to get that caffeine hit without having to put a lot of work in, then the French press might be a better option for you. As there have been times when I've brewed the AEROPRESS and forgotten things like putting a filter paper in, for example, just because it's been 5 a.m. in the morning and I haven't been concentrating or woken up enough to really make a good cup of coffee. Now, all brewing equipment is very personal to what you're going to be using it for. If you're going to be using it at home with lots of people coming over, you are able to get different sizes of cafetières. Therefore, you can make more coffee for more people. Whereas with the AEROPRESS, you can get maybe 2 cups from your brewing method that you might be doing, or the recipe, depending on what recipe you're using. So there's kind of pros and cons to both. So if you are having lots of people over, French press is probably better. If you're making a coffee for yourself, AEROPRESS could be really, really good for that. Another one of those things that might help you make this decision between the French press and the AEROPRESS is whether you're going to be making your coffee out and about. Now, the AEROPRESS is very easy to take around, and also there is the AEROPRESS Go as well, which is even more convenient as it fits all into one cup. Whereas the French press, like this one for example, is glass, so carrying it around with you is maybe not the best idea, so not the most convenient to be out and about brewing with. Now, I don't want to downplay the French press. There is some awesome ways that you can brew with the French press. It's just making sure you're doing things like grinding your coffee fresh and buying really good coffee for it, and maybe even checking your water temperature so that you don't burn the coffee as it's sitting together with it. Now, I know the AEROPRESS can be quite daunting, there's lots of things to think about with it, but it is a great way of brewing, and if you're thinking about getting into coffee in a big way, then the AEROPRESS is a great place to start. I always encourage people, get an AEROPRESS if you're thinking about getting into a higher end of coffee, because there's lots of different ways to use it. You can use it traditional, which is how it's set like this, and you can also use it inverted, and there's loads of different recipes that you can play around with. So if you're thinking about getting into coffee, I always recommend starting off with an AEROPRESS. So there you have it, guys, the comparison between the French press and the AEROPRESS. Two different brewers, but can both make fantastic cups of coffee. I'm going to be doing loads of different recipes and how-tos on the French press and the AEROPRESS. So make sure you subscribe and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of those. And I'll see you in the next episode of About Coffee.